Hello everyone, hope y'all been doing well lately. Since the new Wave 5 of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass just came out around a week or so ago, I've had the chance to play these tracks in depth, and I figured I'd actually make a tier list for the tracks in question. So I'm actually going to be ranking these tracks based off of three main factors, the first of which is visual. I'm mainly looking for how the track looks in general, but also if it's faithful to the original track if it happens to be a retro track. Second's going to be music. I know it's not entirely important to a lot of people, but in my opinion, a good soundtrack with a good visual really creates an immersive atmosphere in the track and just makes it more fun to play in general. Lastly, and most importantly to me, is gameplay. And I know that's a very broad subject, there's a lot of factors that contribute to that, but it's just going to be how fun it is to play overall for me. And I know that's very subjective, of course, it's hard to really quantify what makes a track fun to play, but at the end of the day, this is a tier list and also just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to be going through the tracks in order, starting from Athens Dash and ending with Vancouver Velocity. And with that being said, let's just get into it. We begin Wave 5 with Athens Dash, and in my opinion, this is a very good track. I really like the aesthetic overall. I know for most tour tracks, you're just driving on a paved road because, you're in a city. But I like how this one differentiates itself from that. The music is pretty catchy, and I think it really fits along with the track. That combined with the visual, I think, is enough for Athens Dash to differentiate itself between the other city tracks. The gameplay is what sets it apart for me, though. It's just that perfect balance of, a bunch of items can fly around and hit you. There's a lot of sharp turns, especially in 200cc. It requires a lot more skill, in my opinion. And it just fits what a Mario Kart track should be. Very hectic, chaotic, but fun. And so for that, I'm going to give Athens Dash a very solid A tier. Coming up next, we've got Double Dash's Daisy Cruiser. I'm not going to lie, I'm just not a huge fan of this one. I do enjoy the visual, and I do like how the item boxes and the tables move in this section right here, but I just don't think the track gives me enough, It's standard, it's not bad, but that's really all I can say about it. The music is just there for me, it's not distinct enough for me to really enjoy it that much, and the gameplay, it just feels very standard, feels almost like a Mushroom Cup sort of track. And that's not bad, but it's not enough for me to really enjoy this track as much as I do the other tracks in this wave. And so for that, I'm going to give it a C tier, because it's inoffensive, but it's not good to me. Next up is Moonview Highway, and to be honest, I'm a huge fan. And I know there's definitely some bias in that because Mario Kart Wii was my favorite growing up, but I don't know. Something about it, the vibe, it feels perfect to me. I know this might be a bit unoriginal, but I really do enjoy the nighttime city aesthetic. It's something of the New York Minute for me. I think it really just gives the track a much more fun feel than if it were to be in daytime. I've always loved the soundtrack. I think it really fit well with the sort of hectic highway drive with a lot of traffic. Now I know in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, traffic's not really there, but the music still fits, and I do like how they kept the change when you get into the toll booth. I also really like the decision to randomize the boost panels throughout each playthrough. I think it very much increases the replayability of the track, and it makes it just feel a bit different each time. And so for that, I'm going to give Moonview Highway a solid A tier. Last in this cup is going to be Squeaky Clean Sprint, and to be honest, I really like this one. It might not be my favorite Nitro track. I think Yoshi's Island is just a little better in my opinion, but it's very good. I like the look of everything being massive around you. I think you feeling very small contributes pretty well to the track overall. I also think the composition is just perfect. It's a very relaxing sort of vibe, and then the instrumentation I think was great. Again, it's not as good to me as Yoshi's Island just because Yoshi's Island is so nostalgic, but I still love it. Lastly, I'm a pretty big fan of the gameplay. I always loved when they put alternate routes in tracks because it makes the track feel a bit less linear. And yes, I know you take the optimal route 95% of the time, so who cares? But anything that makes the track a bit less repetitive is always appreciated by me. And so for that, it's an A tier. Moving on to the next cup, we have LA Laps to start us off. This is a great track to me. I've always liked the tracks that are sectionally based or are slightly different each lap because I think it makes the track feel less repetitive. First of all, the variety of visuals presented in this track really make it more replayable to me, at least. It's always fun to go through the track because it seems like you can find something different to enjoy each time you go through, and it's a lot more replayable as a result. I know this is a pretty mixed argument in the community, but as someone who's played saxophone for many years, I just can't help but enjoy the new composition of the soundtrack just a bit more than the original. I also feel like the original just didn't fit entirely well with the track. I know it's unique, but I just didn't personally enjoy it. Overall though, the track plays very well, feels fun and refreshing each time, and so for that, this is going to be the first S tier in the tier list. Moving on, we have Sunset Wilds, and to be honest with you, this is the biggest disappointment in the wave by far, and this might be one of the bigger disappointments in the entire Booster Course Pass. I just don't get why they didn't implement the sunset mechanic. I understand Mario Kart 8's engine is a bit different. Maybe it's hard to implement in the engine, but still, that was the mechanic that really distinguished this track from others and made it feel so fun to play. Without the sunset, it just feels so boring, so vanilla. Like, why would you play this over almost any other track in the game? I don't see myself replaying it personally. And to be honest, if not for the great soundtrack, this would be an F tier. But the soundtrack is good, I have to give it that, so it's a D tier for me. Moving on to one of the most iconic tracks from Mario Kart Wii, we have Koopa Cape. And oh my gosh, it's so much better than Sunset Wilds. Although, I do have to say, even as someone who grew up on Mario Kart Wii, I just don't enjoy it as much as some Mario Kart Wii players apparently do. That being said, it's still a great track, but it's not like a top 5 track in the game or anything, in my opinion. I just don't have the same nostalgia for it as some other players do. I'd rather have something like Bowser's Castle from Wii or even Dry Dry Ruins. That being said though, it's iconic for a reason. The soundtrack is great, the visuals hold up very well, so even with all that being said, I still have to give Koopa Cape a very nice A tier. And is there any better way to end off than with Vancouver Velocity from Mario Kart Tour? I mean, it's such a good track. I really enjoyed it in Tour, and the same carries over to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, obviously. There's just so much good to say about it. But to start off with the visuals, I mean, they're great. I really like the fact that they changed the bridge to an anti-gravity section. I'm really a huge fan of these tracks getting anti-gravity sections. It makes them feel more like they belong in Mario Kart 8, as opposed to just being a port. The soundtrack is a banger, obviously, but I'm going to have to nitpick it just a little bit. I'm not sure I like it as much as the original, as weird as it sounds. Like, for example, instrumentation's fine here, but why do they take this melody up an octave? I just don't get it. It doesn't entirely sound the same, and it just doesn't sound as good to me as the original. Lastly, though, and more importantly, the gameplay. It's phenomenal. I love the suspension bridge. I love the hockey arena, but I do question why the third section was a little shorter to me. I feel like they could have made it a little longer, or like made it a reverse section to just kind of give it the similar length to the first two. That being said though, it's still an amazing track. It's still an S tier to me. And this is going to be the final list. I know this is the first time I'm really doing one of these videos, so I hope it turned out well. Did you agree with this video? Let me know down in the comments, and thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.